The worst day of my life started with a vending machine that wouldn't take my last dollar. I stood there longer than I should have, feeding that wrinkled bill back into the slot, smoothing it on my thigh, trying again. The machine hummed like it was thinking about it, then spit the dollar back out. I laughed once, short and empty, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to do something else, something quieter, something heavier. That was when she said my name, not loud, not dramatic. Just my name, spoken the way people do when they already know the weight it carries. I turned, expecting a nurse, or maybe someone who'd mistaken me for somebody else. Instead, there was a woman sitting in one of those molded plastic chairs they bolt to hospital floors. Mid-40s maybe, calm eyes, coat folded neatly on her lap like she planned to be there a while. "I'm sorry," I said. "Do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, but today isn't really about me knowing you." That should have been my cue to walk away. I knew that. I'd spent the last few hours learning what cues feel like when you ignore them. But she had that kind of voice, the kind that doesn't push. It just leaves space. She nodded toward the vending machine. "They jam if you fold the bill. Try the one by the elevators. It still takes cash." I didn't need a soda. I didn't need anything. But I walked with her anyway, our shoes making the same tired sound against the floor. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped. Somewhere else, a TV murmured to no one. We stopped near the elevators. She didn't press the button. "I'm on a clock," she said, "and so are you." That got my attention. I told her I didn't have time for riddles. She smiled, not amused, understanding. "You have exactly 24 hours, she said, "from right now." I almost laughed again. Almost. "You don't get to say that." She looked at the floor, then back up at me. "I know, but it's still true." That was when I noticed the envelope in her hand. Old paper, soft at the edges. My last name written across the front in block letters. The ink faded like it had been handled too much. I stared at it longer than was polite. She followed my eyes and turned the envelope over, hiding the name against her coat. "I'm not giving you that yet," she said. "Not until tomorrow." I told her I wasn't going anywhere tomorrow. My voice cracked on the word. She didn't comment on that. She just reached into her pocket and slid a small slip of paper into my hand. An address, a time. "Say it," she said. I didn't want to. Saying it would make it real. Saying it would mean I had plans. On a day like this, plans felt like a betrayal. She waited. I read the address out loud, then the time. My voice sounded strange in the hallway, like it belonged to someone else. "If you're there," she said, "you'll get 1 good minute." I asked her what that meant. She stood, folded the envelope tighter, and finally pressed the elevator button. "It means this day doesn't end the way you think it does." The doors opened. She stepped inside, then paused. "If you change your mind," she added, "that's okay. Just don't tell yourself it wouldn't have mattered." The doors closed. I stood there long enough for the soda machine to buzz behind me, long enough to realize my hands were shaking. I looked down at the address again, like it might rearrange itself into something sensible. Outside, the parking lot smelled like rain on warm asphalt. I sat in my car without turning the key, thinking about the envelope, thinking about how she'd said my name like it wasn't new. I drove anyway. I told myself I was just killing time. I told myself I'd turn around after the diner on Route 9, the one with the cracked vinyl booths and the pie that tastes better than it should. I told myself a lot of things. The diner was half full, a couple arguing quietly, a trucker nursing coffee. I slid into a booth and ordered whatever the waitress recommended. When she brought it, she asked if I was okay. "Yeah," I said, because it was easier than explaining no. I ate slowly, watched the door, half expecting her to walk in, half hoping she wouldn't. Instead, I noticed the way the clock above the counter skipped a second every minute, like it was limping towards something. I paid and left a tip I couldn't afford. Back in the car, I checked the paper again. The address wasn't far, familiar, in a way that made my chest tighten. I realized then that I hadn't asked her name. That night, I checked into a motel that smelled like bleach and old carpet, thin walls, a buzzing light outside the door. I lay on the bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way she'd hidden the envelope. The way she'd said tomorrow, like it was a promise she was responsible for keeping. At some point, sleep found me anyway. Morning came gray and quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed, the address on the nightstand, my phone face down beside it. 24 hours, she'd said. I was already halfway through. Before I pulled out of the lot, I looked straight into the camera on my dash, like I was talking to someone riding shotgun, and I said, "If you've ever had a day where one stranger changed the direction of it, stay with me." Then I turned the key and followed the road. The road out of the motel cut through a stretch of low trees and tired billboards, the kind advertising lawyers and fireworks in the same font. I drove with the windows cracked, letting the cold air keep me honest. Every few miles, I checked the clock on the dash like it might argue with me. She wasn't in the car. I knew that. Still, the passenger seat felt occupied, like a conversation paused, not ended. I stopped at a gas station just after sunrise. The clerk nodded without interest. I filled the tank and bought coffee that tasted like it had been thinking about coffee once. Standing there, lid in one hand, I unfolded the slip of paper again. Same address, same time. Nothing new appeared. That annoyed me more than it should have. Back on the highway, the sky opened up into that pale winter blue that never quite warms you. I passed a sign for a town I hadn't thought about in years. The name hit me harder than the coffee. I took the exit. The diner there hadn't changed. Same slanted sign, same parking lot with the pothole everyone avoided. Inside, the booths were vinyl and forgiving, the kind that remember you even if you don't deserve it. I slid in and ordered eggs, no reason. Just habit. She sat across from me without asking. I didn't jump. That surprised me. It felt like she'd been there the whole time and I was just catching up. "You're early," she said, glancing at the wall clock. "You said tomorrow," I told her. "Not where to wait." She smiled. "Fair." She ordered toast and tea like that was always the plan. The waitress didn't blink. Some people move through rooms like they belong there. I asked her how she knew my name. She stirred her tea too long. "I know a lot of names," she said. "Yours just mattered today." That wasn't an answer. I let it sit between us with the plates. We ate, traded small things, weather, the town, how diners all smell the same in the morning. It felt easy in a way that made me nervous. Easy usually comes with a bill. At one point she said, "You always sit with your back to the wall." I looked around, realized she was right. "You stop at yellow lights," she added, "even when you don't need to." I asked her how she knew that. She shrugged. "I pay attention." When we walked back to the car, she hesitated, then opened the glove box like it was hers. Inside was an old keychain I'd forgotten about. Bent metal, faded logo. She picked it up, turned it once, and put it back carefully. "You kept it," she said, more to herself than to me. "That did it." "Okay," I said. "You don't get to know things like that without explaining why." She leaned against the car, hands in her coat pockets. "If I tell you everything now," she said, "you won't come tomorrow." "And if you don't?" "You might still walk away," she said, "but at least it'll be your choice." We drove, long stretches of nothing. She pointed out landmarks I remembered and some I didn't. Once she laughed at something I said, and it sounded like relief. By early afternoon, we checked into another motel, different chain, same smell. As we walked the hallway, she slowed near one door, then kept going. I noticed. Filed it away. Inside the room, she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the envelope from her coat, set it between us without opening it. "Not yet," she said, reading my face. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, stared at myself like I might confess something. When I came back, she was tracing the writing on the envelope with her finger. "That handwriting," she said. "It hasn't changed." "Whose is it?" I asked. She looked up. "Tomorrow." I wanted to argue. Instead, I sat beside her and listened to the hum of the heater. Outside, someone slammed a door. Life continued at a volume just below ours. Later, we walked to a place nearby for dinner. Nothing special, booth by the window. She told a story about getting lost once and not hating it. I told one about a job I almost took. We talked around the edges of things. At the register, she paid. I noticed the receipt as she folded it. The name at the top stopped me cold. A place tied to a version of me I'd packed away. Back in the car, I waited. She started the engine and said, "You don't trust me." "I'm trying," I said. She nodded. "That counts." The road went quiet. Trees leaned in. The sky dimmed. I watched the miles tick down and felt something forming, something like a story that didn't include me as the main character. As we pulled into the motel lot again, she said softly, "If you don't want to do this, you don't have to." I looked at the clock, at the envelope. at the road we'd taken. "I want to know why you chose me," I said. She met my eyes. "Then keep driving tomorrow." I lay awake that night, staring at the buzzing light outside, the receipt folded in my pocket. Somewhere in the room, the heater clicked like a countdown. I started to believe I was being guided, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I woke before the alarm, the kind of waking where your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. The room was dim and colorless. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered the envelope, the receipt, the way she'd said tomorrow like it was already written down somewhere. She was awake too. Sitting at the small table by the window, coat on, hair pulled back like she'd been doing this for years, watching the parking lot like it might change its mind. "You didn't sleep," I said. She shook her head. "I didn't need to." That bothered me more than it should have. We checked out without much talk. The clerk slid the key across the counter and wished us a good day like it was any other. Outside, the sky had that low, heavy look, the kind that promises weather without committing to it. I drove. 10 minutes in, I finally said what had been pressing against my ribs all night. "You planned this." She didn't answer right away. "The route," I continued. "The stops, the timing. That receipt wasn't an accident. Neither was the envelope." She watched the road like it might speak for her. "Planning doesn't always mean control," she said. "That depends on who's doing the planning." We pulled into a gas station when the light came on. I cut the engine harder than necessary. Inside, the place smelled like burned coffee and hot plastic. While I paid, I noticed her at the rack of maps, paper ones. She bought one and folded it with practiced hands. Back in the car, she laid it open between us, a route traced in pen, clean lines. A note in the margin, small but clear. If he says no, plan B. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I just stared at it until the letters stopped swimming. "So, I was a variable," I said. "That's what this is." She closed the map slowly. "You were a hope." "That's not better." She took a breath, steadying herself. "You didn't have to come this far. You made it hard not to." We drove in silence after that. The kind that fills the car and leaves no room to escape. Rain started without warning, tapping the windshield like it had a point to make. She reached for the radio, then thought better of it. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, a number I didn't recognize. It stopped before I could answer. She glanced at it, then looked away too quickly. "Was that for you?" I asked. "No," she said. "Not anymore." That answer landed wrong. We pulled off near a small town, the kind with one main street and flags on every other pole. She asked me to park. There was a building there I hadn't seen in years. Same brick, same crooked steps. I felt the past shift in its sleep. "I'm not going in there," I said. "You don't have to," she replied. "Just wait." She got out. I watched through the rain-streaked glass as she spoke to someone near the door. An older man. They exchanged a few words. He looked at the car, looked back at her, nodded. When she returned, her face had changed. Not guilt. Something closer to resolve. "That's enough for today," she said. "We should go." "Who was that?" "Someone who knew the promise." I laughed once, sharp. "Of course." We drove back toward the motel, the rain easing like it had said what it needed to say. My hand stayed tight on the wheel. "You could have told me," I said. "You would have said no. You don't know that." She turned toward me then, really looked. "I do." The words sat between us, heavy and unmovable. Back at the motel, I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. We stood under the awning, rain dripping off the edge in a steady line. "If you walk away," she said, "you'll miss it." There it was again, not a threat, not a plea, a statement. "And if I stay?" I asked. She hesitated, just long enough. "Then tomorrow will hurt less than today." I watched her walk to her car, the envelope tucked under her arm, the map folded and hidden. For the first time since this started, I considered leaving, driving until the address became meaningless. Inside my room, I sat on the bed and unfolded the receipt again. The date, the place. Too neat to be coincidence, too personal to be random. I realized then that whatever this was, it hadn't started yesterday, and that scared me more than anything else. Outside, the rain stopped. The heater clicked on. The clock crept forward. Tomorrow was getting closer, and I still didn't know whose story I was in. The next morning came quietly, like it didn't want to get blamed for what it was about to bring. The rain had washed the world thin overnight. Everything looked newer than it deserved. She knocked once. I opened the door already dressed, like I'd been waiting longer than I wanted to admit. She looked relieved, which told me something before either of us spoke. We drove without the map this time. She knew the way. That should have bothered me more than it did. The place she led me to wasn't dramatic. No gates, no sign announcing significance. Just a low building with a flag out front and a small parking lot that always seems half full, no matter the hour. The kind of place you pass 100 times without ever thinking you'll need it. I stayed in the car. She went inside alone. I watched people come and go, a man carrying a cardboard box, a woman helping someone up the steps, ordinary moments lining up like they always do. After a while, the door opened again, and she stepped out with someone I didn't expect. He was older than I remembered, thinner, still walked with that slight lean to the left. When he saw me, he stopped. She stayed behind him, giving us space like she'd been trained in it. I got out of the car on legs that felt borrowed. "You came," he said. "I didn't know I was supposed to," I replied. He smiled, small and careful. "You were, just not when." We stood there, three people bound by something none of us were saying out loud yet. Finally, she reached into her coat and handed him the envelope. He turned it over in his hands, then looked at me. "She promised," he said, "a long time ago." I looked at her. "Promised what?" She exhaled, like she'd been holding that breath since the hospital. "To make sure you got this on the right day," she said. "Not sooner, not later." He opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter, creased soft from being read and reread. He didn't read it there, he just handed it to me. "Your father wrote it," he said. The ground didn't move, but something inside me did. "He didn't know when," she added gently. "So he asked me to decide." I wanted to argue, to ask who gave her that right. Instead, I unfolded the paper with hands that weren't steady. It wasn't long, no speeches, just his handwriting, unmistakable even after all this time. He wrote about not being good with timing, about hoping I'd have enough distance by the time I read it to hear him clearly, about being proud in ways he never managed to say out loud. I read it once, then again. When I looked up, she was watching my face, not the letter. Like that was the real answer. "So all of this," I said, folding it carefully, "was about this?" "Not just this," she replied. "About when?" I thought about the map, the route, the clock watching, the way she never pushed, only positioned. "You weren't guiding me," I said slowly. "You were guarding the moment." She nodded. Some things break if they arrive too early. We sat on a low concrete wall outside, the letter between us like something alive. The older man went back inside, giving us privacy without asking. "I'm sorry I thought," I started. She shook her head. "You thought what made sense with what you had." We sat in silence for a while, the good kind, the kind that doesn't rush you. Finally, she checked her watch. "Almost time," she said. "For what?" I asked, even though I could feel it lining up now. "For the best minute," she said. "The one where you get to decide what you carry forward." I folded the letter and put it in my pocket, right over my heart, like that was where it had been aiming all along. I looked at her, really looked. "You did all this," I said, "and you won't be here for it." She smiled, soft and unguarded for the first time. That was never part of the promise. The clock on the dash ticked over when we got back in the car. We were exactly on time. And suddenly, I understood why she had never been in a hurry. She had been waiting for the moment to arrive whole, and it had. We didn't drive far. She asked me to pull into a small park just off the road, the kind with one worn path, a couple of benches, and a flag that never seems to come down. No ceremony. No crowd. Just space. The minute hand on the dashboard clock crept forward. "This is it," she said. I waited for instructions. Another envelope? Another stop? Something bigger than this quiet place. Instead, she opened the door and stepped out, then stood there waiting for me like this part only worked if I chose it. We sat on a bench that had seen better decades. The wood was cool. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and morning. Somewhere nearby, a truck passed, loud and ordinary and alive. I checked the time. 1 minute. She didn't say anything at first, She let the silence do its job. Then she spoke carefully, like she was placing something fragile in my hands. "He asked me to make sure you weren't alone when it finally landed," she said. "Not surrounded, not distracted, just present." I took the letter out again. Didn't read it. I didn't need to. The words had already settled where they were going to live. For the first time since the hospital, I felt my chest loosen. Not fixed, not healed. Just open enough to breathe without it hurting. That was the minute. No music swelled. Nothing magical happened. A breeze moved the flag. A bird startled from the grass. Life kept going, unimpressed by my breakthrough. And somehow that made it perfect. When the clock ticked forward again, she stood. "That's my cue," she said. I looked up at her. "You're really going," she nodded. I was always supposed to. I wanted to ask where. I wanted to ask why her. I wanted to ask 100 things that suddenly felt less important than they used to. "Thank you," I said instead. She smiled, like that was the only payment she'd ever wanted. "Take care of the rest," she replied. He'd like that. She walked away without looking back. No dramatic goodbye. Just a woman crossing a small parking lot, getting into her car, and driving off like she had other promises to keep somewhere else. I stayed on the bench a while longer. When I finally stood, I noticed something tucked under the bench. A small folded note. My name again. Her handwriting this time. It only said one thing. "Now it's yours." I folded it and put it with the letter. On the drive home, the road looked the same. The signs hadn't changed, but I had. Just enough to notice the difference. The worst day hadn't disappeared, but it hadn't won either. If you've ever had someone show up when you didn't know how to keep going, I'd love to know which part of this stayed with you the most. And if you want to be here for the next story, you're welcome to come along.